Okay, guys, we are going to get started. And just as a notion, this is a recorded session. So we will be sending this out in playback, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. So look forward to getting this off to folks. So I want to talk a little bit about the 360 view of our life and our business and how this means that we are rotating in and out of our business, from spouse to parent to entrepreneur to community leader. Or maybe you're a solo entrepreneur and you have a side hustle business, and you may be single, you might not have children, you may be a single parent. You are definitely the number one salesperson in your company. You might be accounting, you may be the visionary, you may be the operator, but balancing it all can either drive you to feel like you're an imposter, or you can feel empowered that you are keeping up with all of the hats that you have to wear every single time. Your business is only as successful as your home life. And your home life starts with your heart, your mind, and your spirit. And that ability to feel secure from within means that you've got to slow down the distractions and the internal conflict that keeps you from being fully present in your business. And that is why I founded the 360 Entrepreneur, because I know this well. And my childhood broke me, and everybody's got their own childhood stories for sure. I would say probably in my 20s and early 30s, I went from allowing other people to break me as a child to breaking myself and self-sabotaging myself and creating my own punishment. And then in my mid 30s and early 40s, I allowed others to sabotage my well-being, my ability to be a great parent and be a great business leader. Decades of abuse. The good news is I'm very strong-headed. And because I'm very strong-headed, I took ownership of that part of myself. And I decided, okay, let's connect the dots and figure out what's going on here, because there's a repetitive pattern of abuse. And why is that happening? And that inner critic inside my head would not turn off. So with that being said, let me tell you, I'm a mother of 5 adult children. I'm a stepmother of 2. I am a grandmother, but I like to be called Yaya. I've started businesses, I've lost businesses, and that cute man on the screen is my husband. I'm happy to say that in my mid-50s now, I have found a lot of internal peace and happiness and spiritual fulfillment, because I did turn down the inner critic. And life is not perfect. It never will be. I would love to lose a few pounds, but I definitely would say that my road to healing is never going to be done. But boy, has it come a very long way. And because of my ability to silence that inner critic and put boundaries around the outer critics, I have been able to find that peace and stability in my life that I've longed for. So if I can help you fast track through those mistakes, I certainly want to do so. With that, let's grab some coffee. We're going to take a deep dive in. And my goal is you're going to come out of this session with some tools to either control your life, maybe even come out of this saying, you know what, I think I need a little bit of professional help. I hope that it will help you want to seek out additional resources so that you can really get control of the critic that is, I would say, hindering you from what you need to do to thrive in life and in business. And if you don't think that this affects your business and your ability to drive sales, let me just say that being an entrepreneur is like putting a mirror in front of your face, and it's going to show you every good, bad, and ugly thing that you do within your life. And you can't run from yourself. It's going to put you front and center. And if you're unhealthy in your mind, and if you're unhealthy in your spirit and in your heart, your business decisions, not let alone your personal decisions, will become detrimental to your business. And I'm going to show you how these two tie together. So you can have great business goals and sales growth initiatives. You can have a great team backing you, or you could be a solo entrepreneur with great vision. But if you're not cultivating what's going on inside, you're really not going to find the success that you want and that you really deserve. So let's get started. I want you to imagine being in your business for yourself, and whether you're on an online business or you are a brick or mortar store, that every decision you make, you are completely second guessing yourself. You allow the criticisms of your partner, your family members, maybe your employees drive decision. They may challenge you to make a decision for your business that goes against your gut instinct. You are blown by the wind of other people's opinions. If someone feels this way about you, then you cater so that you can seek their approval. And it's a very dangerous role to play as a business owner, let alone a human being, right? You have to have autonomy and a sense of strong self. And you can have the right products, you can deliver the best in service, the best in class. But if you're driven by the need for approval because you can't find confidence and grace within yourself, then don't expect for your business to survive. And more importantly, don't expect yourself to survive within your own mind, your own spirit, your own relationships around you. Entrepreneurship is the hardest job in the world. And if you layer that with ongoing self-sabotage, you're really set up for failure. So everyone's got an inner and outer critic. The inner critic is that voice in our head that holds us back from taking risks, reaching our goals. It judges every action that we take very harshly. On the other hand, outer critics come from your partner, from your family, from employees, from your peers, and they are more than happy to bring you down when you're up, chastise you, criticize every single decision you make, and never give you grace. And the goal here is that you've got to learn how to trust yourself and your own internal wisdom, your own internal God-given wisdom. And I think it's really important that we pause for a second, because you've got to distinguish between healthy feedback with bad intention, right? And there are people that love you and care about you, and maybe their intent is proper, but it triggers something inside you that brings you down. So you've got to really learn how to covet yourself and protect yourself, because even though their intent is well, it can be a huge distraction when you're learning how to turn down the noise. And trust me, once you get to the point of learning how to turn down that inner critic inside, when people have great intent and they offer you criticism, that trigger will not happen right away. You'll know, even if it's hurtful, you'll know, I know where they're coming from and it's okay. But how do you look at the people that don't have great intent, and what do you do with those individuals? We're going to talk a little bit about later on in the presentation, because sometimes people are malicious and they are jealous, or they're acting out of anger and their own hurt because they haven't dealt with whatever's going on inside. And listen, you got to build the muscles of clear thinking, self-awareness, self-confidence. And these are all the great gifts that we've been given. And it is incumbent upon us to take those gifts and leverage them so that we can reach our destination in terms of what we are brought on this earth to do. Okay. So there's a process for dealing with the inner and outer critic. And I have to tell you, I've gone through this process, and it really is this point where you start connecting the dots. You understand that you are always down on yourself. You see that pattern. And then there's this kind of sense of grief about it, because you wonder, why am I always beating myself up? Why is this always happening to me? Or why am I allowing others to criticize me? And that, I guess, grief really comes from abandonment. It comes from the notion that you've abandoned your own self-worth and your own beauty inside. Maybe you didn't have that growing up. Maybe you don't have it now. And maybe you don't have the right people around you right now. And then there comes this kind of internal grief once you connect the dots and realize, man, I'm really hard on myself, or I'm allowing this person to really be harmful with me. And there comes a time when there's shock about it, because you can't believe that you have allowed yourself to be so cruel to yourself. There comes a time when you're shocked that you allowed the people that you love to take advantage of you. But what happens is you slow down that thinking and you really start moving into an alignment of reparenting yourself, really cultivating yourself as if you are the child, and you are looking at yourself as a child, and you're saying to yourself, hey, I can't keep treating myself this way. And you begin to protect yourself. And when you are creating a world of protection, you're creating a world of safety. When you feel safe, you feel happy. So reparenting, it's a term of the process of really unlearning your coping strategies that you might have developed as a child, right? And it's about learning to love, nurture, and care for yourself. And maybe that wasn't completely provided in parenthood, childhood. And so therefore you've got to go back to the basics and say, I would never talk to my child this way, or I would never talk to a relative's child this way, or a friend's child this way. Why am I doing this to myself? And starting to treat that inner child, you hear that cliche term, but it's a real term that's used in therapy. You start treating that child with care and encouragement and decency. So let's just talk about good enough parenting. Sometimes we weren't raised in an abusive home. We had good enough parents. They did a really great job. And this term of good parenting comes from a psychoanalyst. His name was Donald Winnicott. And he says, look, there's parents and there's situations where you had really bad trauma at home, but sometimes you just didn't. And for those that had good enough parenting, I would say sometimes you can really turn down the noise of your inner and outer critic with yourself, with a support group. And when I say support group, friends and family that love you and encourage you and really keep you in check. And then sometimes if you had abuse, emotional abuse, drug abuse, substance abuse of any sort, sexual abuse, that kind of thing, you really need to have a therapist go along this journey with you. So critical. So let the professionals do it. So while we're talking about this, I think sometimes good enough parenting gives you enough confidence to say, you know what, I need to tweak a few areas in my life so I can move forward and get the resources I need to do that alone. But if you've had severe trauma, or let's say you had good enough parenting, but then you self-sabotage many years of your life, then it's time to maybe go get that professional help. And certainly I did that for almost a decade. And that with a spiritual life unfolding really were the partners that helped me to get where I'm at today. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's really important that we're going to dive deep, because that's what you have to do in order to be a strong entrepreneur. You've got to constantly reflect and reevaluate yourself. But at the end of the day, you may need some professional help. So let's talk losing your voice. Entrepreneurship is an extremely lonely journey. If you don't have peers that understand what it means to wear a dozen hats, sales, marketing, operations, boss, community leader, account manager, etc., right? Innovator, visionary, developing new products and services. People don't understand that. If you don't have a peer-to-peer relationship with these individuals in your life, you can feel very isolated and alone. And what happens when you've got this inner critic inside, you have a very difficult time making great decisions. And so, because you're often required to make critical decisions, take risks, You need great support. And if you can't rely on yourself and that internal voice is so loud and negative, you're going to feel frozen, you're going to feel unsure, and you're going to be questioning your intent and the intent of others, right? So what's going to happen? You're going to slow down your business because you are stumbling along the way. Very important. So let's talk about losing your voice. A lot of times this comes from your upbringing. Even if you had good enough parenting, sometimes you don't know your own internal voice. And what happens when you don't know your internal voice, you really don't have a sense of self. So you can't silence that inner critic or those outer critics. You don't have the confidence to stand up to them. And you don't have the confidence to look at yourself and say, that's ridiculous. Stop that type of thinking, slow down and focus. And you become hard on yourself, hard on others, hard on your staff, and you really operate in what we call the 4 Fs. So 4 Fs, it affects your ability to lead your business. It affects your ability to lead your life. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Let's talk about this. When you're a business owner, you're a parent, community leader, you are a boss, you are managing customers, you have to have the ability to make quick decisions to effectively succeed in what you're trying to accomplish. And when you're faced with difficult or challenging situations, it can be easy to fall into one of these 4 Fs. And let's talk about how this affects you as an entrepreneur. So the fight response is when a business owner reacts aggressively to any type of situation. So somebody made a mistake, they're upset with them. Your business partner failed to do XYZ, you get into fight mode. And this really can lead to major issues, especially if tempers are involved and you can't control your temper and it's out of control. The flight response is when you avoid the problem altogether. You don't want to fire an employee, you don't want to fire a client, you don't want to deal with your partner and those particular issues that they're causing in the business. You have poor culture in your business, you don't want to deal with that. Your marriage life is affecting your ability to really sustain a strong business and accomplish the goals that you're trying to achieve. That kind of flight response is when you're avoiding all problems altogether. The freeze response is when you're overwhelmed and you just can't do anything at all. You don't feel like you've got the ability to be clear-minded to make the right decisions. And finally, the fawn response is when you can't do anything or anyone can't do anything for you that makes you happy. Nothing makes you happy. It doesn't matter what type of business you're in, you're not happy. It doesn't matter if you are hiring a certain type of employee, you're not happy. It doesn't matter if your business partner or your life partner is doing everything they can to make your home life or your work environment great and peaceful, you're not happy. Bottom line is, it doesn't matter what anybody does for you. It doesn't matter how successful you are, you cannot be happy. And these 4 Fs really encompass the outcome of having a strong inner critic or strong outer critics, or the combination of both. And let me just tell you, if you've got a strong inner critic, you attract outer critics like a magnet. That is just the law of attraction, if you will. If you're hard on yourself, everybody else will be hard on you as well. So when you understand these kind of 4 placements in your life and in your business, you really can start slowing down your thinking, and you can start thinking about, how do I calm myself down so I'm not operating in these 4 Fs, okay? And let me just say this, it is never too late to begin the learning journey. When you are recovering from trauma or criticisms, it's not a linear process, right? It's just an evolving journey. You're always going to be improving yourself. And I think that's the beauty of life, is it's the journey itself. You're never going to really fully reach your destination, but you're always working on those areas. And I would say, as a person that has lost much, gained much, lost much, and then gained much again, I still find that I'm still happier, even though I'm working on all of these different areas in my life. I'm happier about the process. I'm excited about what's next and what's to come. And when you get excited about that, you live a little bit better. I'd love to shed a few pounds, right? Those are some things I'd like to work on. That's next. But I'm so happy that I can talk to my husband about affirmations or vision boards or things like that. I never had that before. So it's always an in and out of areas, and looking at your life from a 360-degree view and saying, what do I need to work on now? And you'll stop in that circle of motion, say, I need to work on my marriage now, or I need to work on my spiritual life, or I need to work on my relationship with my kids, or I need to work with my employees, I need to work with my clients. So you're constantly doing that 360 view. But the beauty is, it's never too late to keep working on it. And so what happens when you're ready to work on yourself, you have to set your intentions. Think about it like building a business plan for your business, right? You're building a plan. You've got goals, you've got objectives, and you've got steps to get there. And I would say that it's important that when you are recovering from trauma, and I hate using that word trauma because I think it's overused for people that don't like to have accountability for their lives. But I will say that if you are hurting yourself through that ongoing mindset of inner critic talking, or if you are allowing people in your life that take advantage of you and you don't have the boundaries to protect yourself and love on yourself, I think that it's really important to know that you are creating trauma for yourself, right? So it's the proper word, but I think it's important to say that I'm not one to whine. I am one to fight for my own well-being and take accountability for the mistakes that I've made in my life. And I expect anybody that I'm mentoring or talking to do the same. So when I use the word trauma moving forward, know that does not give the excuse to sit around and whine and cry about your life. It means get on with it and start figuring out the tools you need to succeed. Okay. So with that said, it's important, I think, to establish why you need to work on this inner voice. How is it affecting your business? Is it affecting your ability to not fire people or to not take risks? Is it affecting your relationships at home, where you're allowing your partner to walk all over you? Are you allowing parents or children, adult children even, to criticize you and pull you down into kind of this dark abyss of feeling like you can't or will never be good enough? That type of thing. So you really got to take some time to journal that out. And if you don't journal that out, these are the effects. One, you'll have what we call perfectionism attacks, right? It's this mindset that you cannot silence your inner critic. You are going to strive to be perfect in every area of your life, which is a delusion. And there's all or none or black and white thinking that comes with that. That means all things, everybody needs to be good to you. Nobody can make a mistake. Nobody can hurt you, or they're out. It is that micromanagement. If I don't control everything my staff is doing, everything my children are doing, everything my husband, my wife, I am out of control. So I'm going to control and micromanage everything to its crazy point of not being achievable. It's the guilt. I should have, could have, would have. It's workaholic. It is becoming so busy so that you can feel like you are in control and everything's going to be okay, because you're keeping yourself so busy with your checklists of things to do. It's the harsh judgment of yourself. And when you're harsh on yourself, you are harsh on others. You give them no room to breathe, no room for grace, and then it builds contention within the relationship. It's name calling, it's gossiping, because you have to feel superior. So you have to put other people down in order to feel good about yourself. And this rolls into your business. It's micromanaging your staff, micromanage your employees. It's not delegating work to be done. You are controlling the customer's activities and relationship and doing all the work yourself instead of training someone up to take that work over. It is working to the point where you want everything to be so perfect that you make no decisions whatsoever within your business, because you can't move forward, because everything's got to be perfect before you do move forward. So let's talk about what else happens when you don't set clear intentions for recovery. Endangerment attacks. And this is drastic or catastrophic thinking. And if you were raised in a home that had a lot of commotion and drama and abuse, and you never knew what you were walking into, you never knew if that parent was going to take a drink, or if you were going to be sexually abused, or if you were going to be hit, or were they not going to be there for you, or were you going to have food, not have food? When you were brought up in this fighting, never knowing how things were going to be at home, you are always on guard. And what that teaches you is that things are going to be either really good or really bad. And then every decision you make after that, that is your thinking. And that negative thought perpetuates other thinking. You feel shame and guilt because you may be harsh on another individual and you know you shouldn't be. And you may see it manifest in different ways, such as self-sabotaging, avoidance. You might get headaches, migraines, stomach. You may feel like you don't have enough time to get things done, so you operate in a sense of urgency all the time. You might have negative drive all the time, meaning you're only working and accomplishing things because you fear that you're going to be failing, and you're going to fear that you're going to lose something, lose money, lose a spouse. You compromise who you are in relationships in order to have their love or have their attention. It's really disabling your ability to perform with a clear mind. So when you set these intentions to really control this inner critic, you have to remind yourself, hey, slow down. I understand that I'm upset with this person, but it doesn't mean the relationship has to end right now. Slow down. I know this employee made a mistake, but it doesn't mean I need to fire them right now. Slow down. I don't have to grow my business aggressively in order to feel like I'm accomplishing something in my business. It's really calming yourself and slowing yourself down. So take some time to think about why you need to silence your inner critic. What is it doing to your business and to your personal life? And we talked about how experiences in childhood can really shape how you think and how you feel about yourself and the relationships and the world in general. And when you haven't resolved that, if you have not resolved that, you typically have a very low self-esteem and a lack of distrust. You have no healthy boundaries between you and your parents, or you and your children, or you and your spouse, or you and your employees, or even with your clients. You see this a lot with clients really taking advantage of your good nature because you don't have enough self-esteem to stand up for yourself. And by taking the time to process these experiences from the past, you get a deeper understanding of yourself and why you do what you do. And that understanding helps you recognize patterns of behavior. And having this knowledge also helps you to be patient with yourself and with others in difficult situations. And I would say one thing is that when it comes to forgiveness, when you are hard on yourself, it makes it very challenging for you to forgive others because you can't forgive yourself. And sometimes those outer critics can be forgiven, but they still have to be distant in your life. And so I think when it comes to forgiveness, super important that we're forgiving, not because it's the right thing for that individual. They may still be trying to hurt you, but it's important to see them in the same light that you see yourself, which might mean that they've gone through their own set of challenges in life, and how can you give them grace? Now, it doesn't mean that they are allowed to come back into your life, because maybe you give them grace, but you also know they're going to keep hurting you, so they can't come back in your life because of that. Or it may mean that they come back in your life and then there's really clear expectations because you see them through a different set of eyes. And I think the more you work on yourself, the more you see people with a different set of lenses, you can really have empathy for their own upbringing and their own deficiencies and their own inability to really thrive. And I think that's something that is something I definitely have learned to deal with in my life. And it's brought a lot of peace. So let's talk about the 13 steps to shrink that inner critic. I would say that it's really important that as we go through this journey, it's going to go through quickly. But there's a great gentleman by the name of Peter Walker that I have really enjoyed his good works, and he's got great resources as well that talk about dealing with this inner critic and post-trauma healing, if you will. And he's got great candidates that he has talked to, I think, on YouTube and so forth, of other experts in this field. So take a look at his work as well. I was introduced to a lot of his work through my own therapist, and these are the steps that I take, and these are steps that are used for cognitive behavioral change, okay? And not that there's not a spiritual element to it. There's definitely an ability to have a spiritual element to this, but this is what I would say science does to help us get ourselves together, right? So let's get started. I think the first thing in slowing down the anger or frustration that's going on in your head, it requires acknowledging when you feel overwhelmed and you're needing space. And I can remember when I would have these great bouts of, there was someone in my life that would say things and I could feel this rush of anger and literally a rush of anger and frustration that I couldn't understand. I couldn't control it. And I was able to connect the dots because of my own self-work. That person was saying even though that person had great intent, that person was saying some things that I had heard in my childhood, and it was not said with great intent. And so I remember connecting those dots. And now when I have those incidents of somebody saying something and it sounds very familiar for what happened in the past, you can slow down just a little bit. And I think it's important for you to recognize these triggers, because these emotions have a source and you've got to figure out, where is this coming from? And if there's underlying issues that you haven't dealt with, maybe you need to go get professional help. Maybe you can connect the dots on your own without any issues. And it's an opportunity for self-reflection. So the first thing is, when you get really angry with yourself, you get really angry with other people. And when I say angry, I'm talking about extreme emotions, extreme harshness, not being able to rationalize and say, give myself a break or give that other person a break. Then it requires you to pause for a minute. And this takes a lot of practice. This is the hardest thing that I ever worked on and continue to work on, is feeling that rush of emotion and not wanting to react right away. And I'm not perfect at it, but certainly it's something that in business, you've got to temper for sure when you're working with employees, when you're working with clients, that type of thing. But you got to learn to do that within your own family as well. So first step is I'm having a flashback. Something is triggering. What is it? Why is this coming up? And you got to take a moment. And sometimes you have to tell the person, I need a moment. I need a moment, so that you can calm yourself down to go back and reflect. And when you get angry, sometimes that anger comes from fear of a decision that your business partner might have made regarding the business, and fear of failure around that. Fear when an employee makes a mistake with a client, that you're going to lose that client. Fear that your loved one is not acknowledging you and all of the work. And those calming of fear feelings are difficult, but it's very rewarding in terms of knowing that you've got the mental and emotional capacity to slow down that anger, recognize that fear is driving it. Why am I feeling afraid? Why am I beating myself up? And how can I calm down? Can you pray? Can you relax in meditation? Can you remind yourself that you are an adult and you're not in danger? Can you go back to reparenting yourself and caring for yourself and looking at yourself as a child and say, it's okay, we got this? Trying to connect with supportive people as well that can keep you in reality check is also a great benefit when you're feeling vulnerable, because they can say, that's ridiculous how you're thinking. You're better than that. So having that support system around you is really important. And if your support system is equally damaged, then you guys can work on it together as a team. So you'll see as we go through these slides, I have pictures of children, because I think it's important to realize that we would never talk to our own children or our own grandchildren as harshly as we talk to ourselves. Or maybe we did because we were so hard on ourselves. We can go back and course correct that now. Think of a child and how you would talk to that child. You would reassure that child. One thing I have in my office is I have pictures of me as a little girl. And the reason why I have those pictures up is to constantly remind myself that I am okay. I talk to that little girl and I make sure that she knows everything's going to be just fine. You got this. You can get through this. You've gotten through it before. And I try to look at how far I've come so that I can feel strong enough to keep going when I feel down. So speaking to your inner child requires you having a gentle temperament voice, not saying you're stupid, you don't have this, you're going to fail, or allowing the outer critic to say, you made this mistake before, you're going to do this again. How can I trust you? Calm yourself, take a deep breath, and start talking to your inner child. Grab that child's hand, wrap your arms around them, and nurture them and love them and help them feel safety. Remember, when you're taking care of yourself, you begin to feel safe. When you feel safe, you can feel peaceful. When you can feel peaceful, you can start feeling happy. I think this is probably one of the biggest lessons that I have had to really learn is deconstruct eternity thinking. Bad things are not going to happen forever and ever. If you make a mistake in business, you make a mistake in life, it's going to be just fine. You can recover, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to be challenging. It doesn't mean you're not going to be sad or have grief or be angry or frustrated, but it means that all things are not bad forever. And I think this is where suicidal tendencies happen with this type of inner critic thinking, is thinking that person's always going to be mean to you, always going to be bad, always make the same mistake, or you yourself are going to do the same. So you've got to really get emotionally wise and say, you know what, we're okay, we got this. And that comes with saying, I'm an adult here. Okay. When you feel small and you feel fragile, it's like having this kind of emotional flashback of those times where you didn't feel like you were safe, right? but you've got allies, you've got skills, you've got resources. There are past generations that didn't have the tools that you have right now. We didn't have YouTube back then. We didn't have resources to go online and have a therapy appointment via Zoom. There are resources that you have now. You're an adult, you're gonna be okay. So next thing, ease back into your body, because let me just tell you, when you are constantly beating yourself up, you will constantly feel tense. And when you can really recognize how you're treating yourself in that ability, the tension in your body will ease, and you can start getting calm so that you can focus and deconstruct what is happening right now. Why do you feel this shame? Why do you feel angry? Why do you feel the need to criticize and beat yourself up? Why are you jabbing at yourself? And really listen to your voices over and over again. You should have done this, should have billed this way. You should have talked to your spouse this way. You should have done this for your child. It's a constant battle, but as your muscle gets stronger, remember, you can become more in control and more at peace, okay? So really ease yourself, come back to yourself, come back to your present, and stop the catastrophic thinking. Everything is not all bad and everything is not all good. It's very much a gray area. And that catastrophic thinking is the type of thought process where we're always prone to think the worst case possible is going to happen. And I remember raising my children, I felt like we were in a boat in the middle of the ocean and nobody was allowed to move because I was afraid that boat was going to tip over and I was going to lose life, right? So I was constantly tense during their upbringing. I was just a nervous wreck about everything. I was nervous about what was going to happen to them in the future, and I was nervous about what happened in the now, and I was worried about how they would treat me about my past. I was always a nervous wreck. I could not enjoy life. And it's clearly not how I feel now, but that catastrophic thinking and dramatizing every scenario is something that you have to really work on. Everything is not black or white. It's not all bad, not all good. So that anxiety creates depression, it creates tension. It's not good for your health of your body, your mind state, but also not good for your business because you're not able to get away from thinking, oh, I'm going to lose the business. Oh, I'm going to lose the client. No, you've got to get into solution-oriented thinking. And that's part of silencing that inner critic to say, shh, 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 shh. Listen, we're going to sit here with some emotional intelligence and deconstruct what's happening right now. And that's where, if something bad has happened, you have the emotional intelligence to say, you know what? It's okay for me to grieve right now. It's okay for me to be mad about the situation. It doesn't mean I need to stay here, but what it does mean that I don't have to put false pretenses on that I'm happy about what's going on right now. And that ability to express your grief to yourself and to others where it's needed, or to set those boundaries for yourself so that you can grieve for a certain period of time, but then pick yourself back up, is very healthy. What's unhealthy is when you are taking your anger out on others, or you are moving into suicidal thoughts or into low self-esteem, or you're self-sabotaging yourself. That's not healthy grieving. You are allowed to be sad or mad or glad or happy or ecstatic or really mind blown, shocked, whatever emotion you're feeling, you are allowed to have it. That's why God gave you those feelings. So you're allowed to sit in it, you're allowed to feel it, and you're allowed to tell other people, hey, stop for a second. I need to pause for a minute. I need a breather from you, or I need a moment to myself, or I need a moment to figure out what's happening. Go through that emotion, get rid of that emotion if it's a negative emotion, by emotionally, intelligently working through the process of, why am I feeling this way? Okay, what do I need to do about it? Maybe I just need to sit in it and I'll be okay in a little bit. or maybe there's a solution that I have to this problem and I just haven't found it and I need to talk to someone about it. So I think acting through anger and taking it on other people and being grumpy is not really the way it should work. I think what you have to do is really take a moment to say, it's okay. It's okay if I feel tired right now. It's okay if I feel frustrated. It's okay if I feel overwhelmed. And guess what? It's okay if I take a break. It's okay if I just don't work today and stay at home because I need this moment to think. And I think right now in this age of affirmations, meditations, positivity, do ourselves some harm because we think we need to be happy all the time. And that's just not reality-based thinking. It's not emotionally intelligent. It's just not the way God made us, right? We have the ability to go through lots of emotions. And so because we have that ability, it's okay to take the time to do what we need to do in order to get to a better state. So with that being said, I would say cultivating those safe relationships is really the opportunity to allow you to have that safe space in order to be truly who you want to be and who you are, and really getting to know yourself and what is it I like about myself, what is it that I want to work on, and what is it where I know this is maybe not something that a spouse is thrilled with, a quality they have, and I'll recognize that and I'll work on it, but also they have to deal with, this is how I am. And I'm a very direct person. I'm a talker. I want to talk through things. That's not necessarily how my husband is, but you know what? He sits with me and he hears me out and I talk it through. And that's just the way I process things. But he's got the grace to say that's who my wife is and I honor her that way. And because of that, I love him even more. So I think that is an idea of a safe space. I feel safe in that environment with him because I know he's really listening to me. And so with that being said, I would encourage you too, that as an entrepreneur, if you're not on a spiritual journey, that you begin to open that door. And I will never tell anybody how they should believe. But I think that knowing that there is something bigger than ourselves that we can rely on is really a part of the human experience. And I would say the partner in your business. And I have my own fundamental beliefs as well. And that came through a long journey of believing in a God, if you will, believing in God, not believing in God, to exploring if there was a God, to coming to the conclusion that there is a God. That's for me. And so I think when you can incorporate that in your journey, you can feel this presence of knowing that you were not put on this earth for no God-given reason. You have a purpose, and your business has a purpose to change lives. And you have the opportunity to really change lives by being not only a leader in your family and them seeing this evolution of you silencing that inner critic, creating boundaries of those that like to pull you down, right? They see that, they witness that, but you are that for your own clients and for your community as well. And I know from personal experience, there's been times where people have been watching me and I never knew it. And they'll reach out to me every once in a while and said, way back when you said this and it really affected and changed my life. And I had no idea. And that's a powerful thing. That's part of the human experience, is us all lifting each other up and knowing that we have a higher purpose, a higher meaning for being here. So I would say cultivate those safe relationships. And when you do that, they're going to encourage you to silence that inner critic. And again, if you both are damaged, then you can do it together. And I would say that if you have relationships that need to be identified as those that are going to harm you or never let you forget the past, then you have to identify those and you have to separate those out. And you might have to categorize those. You might have to say, you know what? This is not a relationship I'm willing to let go completely, but I am going to put it on pause because I cannot allow them to continue to punish me for my past mistakes. Once that person has done their work, maybe I will let them back into my life. Or you may have to say, you know what? I don't think this person's going to do their own internal work. I think they are always going to want to beat me up, criticize me, critique me, punish me, wait for me to make my next big mistake. And those people you have to lovingly let go. And those are very hard decisions to make, because sometimes they might be the closest family members that you have or the closest friends that you had. But as you grow, I will tell you that you will find that there will be people that will fall off of the bandwagon of life because they are not able to keep up with your growth. They don't understand it. They're not doing their own self-growth. And therefore, the only way they know how to handle it is to turn on you. And these are decisions that you have to make carefully. You might need professional help. You might need some spiritual guidance in that area. But it's real. It's a real situation. And if you want to protect who you are as a human being and your ability to be strong in life and in your business, you must really protect the outer environment. The outer environment affects the inner environment. In order for you to get strong in silencing and turning down the noise of your inner critic, you have to really isolate yourself until you're strong enough to get out there and be around those critics without it influencing you. And sometimes that means a little bit of self-isolation for the time being. And I know I went through that probably for maybe about a year or so, where I just was not really talking to a lot of people. I really needed to work on myself. And so I had a handful of people that really were around me and that could challenge me to be a better version of myself, could hold me accountable, but could also praise me when I was making headway. And I went through that process for a while until I got strong enough. And now I'm happy to be around anybody that's willing to criticize me because I know who I am. It doesn't bother me as much. Okay. I don't have to like it, but it definitely doesn't bother me. And so that comes back to figuring it out. And I think it's so important that, you know, when you are taking control over those extreme emotions, you're either really sad, really happy, really angry, really happy, really frustrated, really depressed, feel like there's nothing that can stop you. That's the minute you know that you are really a victim to really having ongoing flashbacks. When the emotions are very extreme one way to the other, it's not healthy. It's not good stability. Emotions should come in and leave and exit out according to life's journey, but not in extremes. And I'm not saying that if you haven't had severe loss, like people have passed away in your life. And I know there's been people that have had situations where multiple family members died. Obviously, you're going to have extreme grief. And those are extreme situations. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the day in and day out of business and your personal life. If an employee makes a mistake and you have an extreme reaction, or your spouse makes a mistake and you have an extreme reaction, you have to pause for a minute, and it's a sign that you're having some sort of flashback. And you got to pause for a minute and start digesting it and thinking through what's going on here and why am I feeling that way. And that is really taking on the study of cognitive behavior. And you can have a spiritual life where you're going to meditation, or you're going to church, or you're praying, or you're doing, I don't know, any kind of breath work, if you will. But you really have to start treating yourself with a level of emotional intelligence where you're doing some real homework and you've got a strategy on how to deal with these issues. So I would say study the work of Peter Walker, get yourself some help if these issues continue to carry on. Be patient with yourself. We need to wrap up here. I'm seeing the time. Patient with yourself, be loving with yourself. Ultimately, we are responsible for our level of accountability for our personal and professional lives, right? And you are responsible for only you. You can't control your spouse. You can't control your children. You might be raising human beings, as my sister-in-law says, but you've got to have a strong sense of self-awareness and understanding about how your strengths and your weaknesses really affect your actions. And weaknesses are derived from a lot of inner critical thinking. And you got to take control of that, but be patient with yourself. Because the minute you begin to know those thoughts and begin to course correct those thoughts, you are building muscle. It's like going to the gym. You're getting stronger and stronger. So be patient with yourself. Look at the children on this screen. Would you ever say to any of them, you're stupid, you can't do it, you're dumb, why are you thinking this way? There's no way. You would never talk that way to them. So you cannot do that to yourself. Have an honest conversation with yourself. Have an honest conversation with your partner in life. Have an honest conversation with your family members, with your employees about the things that you're working on to improve, set goals, set milestones to accomplish those goals and those areas that you personally want to improve. And use a spiritual life as a catalyst to help you get there faster, because I really believe that, right? And look at how you can build a support system around you to help you keep a reality check in place, that your inner critic and those outer critics have no room in your life. And they're there to make sure that you hold yourself accountable and to also guard you from those outer critics that want to pull you down as well. Pick and choose wisely. Know that you were called for a purpose on this earth. You have a destiny to do and be well with yourself so that other people can see you and watch you evolve into what you were called to do on this earth. And what a beauty if other children like yourself or your grandchildren can watch you through that evolution as well. So we're going to wrap up. I encourage you to follow us on YouTube, and I encourage you to follow our social media platforms wherever you like to be. And also know that we are going to have once a month workshops on working on ourselves. When we work on ourselves, we really become better internally so that we can become better externally in supporting our business and our entrepreneurial ventures. I thank you so much for taking the time to study and work on yourself.